Welcome to Your Future Starts Now, the go-to podcast for extraordinary women who are ready to step into their next chapter with authentic confidence. I'm your host, Gia and Matt, empowerment coach, motivational speaker, children's book author, and girl mom. Whether you're a corporate powerhouse or an entrepreneur, this show is designed for you. Your Future Starts Now is more than just a podcast. It's a movement towards rewriting the rules of success for high-achieving women. Are you ready to get unstuck and step into your next chapter? If so, you're exactly where you need to be. Your future starts now. Welcome to Your Future Starts Now. I'm your host, Gia and Matt. Thanks for joining us today. I am so excited to introduce you to Matt Gerlach. Matt is a highly accomplished entrepreneur and author who's triumphed over extreme adversity, emerging as an expert in personal transformation and alignment. Having become one of the leading experts in entrepreneurship, Matt's helped 3 global powerhouse brands explode beyond $100 million in annual revenue before founding his consulting firm that helped build dozens of 7- and 8-digit businesses while creating nearly 7-digit business of his own. Through a personal journey riddled with struggles, Matt confronted his feelings of brokenness, which forced him into a process of introspection and self-discovery. Matt firmly believes that each person possesses profound wisdom within themselves, and he's dedicated to empowering his clients to access that wisdom and overcome the obstacles that hinder their dreams from becoming a reality. Matt, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. And wow, reading that or hearing you read that, it's touching. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it sounds like you've been quite busy.
Yeah, I would say so. It's been a very busy life, especially past 7 years, but feels good now. Feels very
Amazing. Amazing. So tell us a little bit about your background and sort of what led you to where you are today.
Sure. So, I graduated college. I guess I'm going to start here. And I've always been a top performer. I got a job when I was 15. I'd always had a great work ethic and just sort of like fell into these random careers. I sold metal. I don't think anybody dreams of that sort of a job. It wasn't bad. It just really not very fulfilling. That it's a paycheck, and you get to help people with their metal needs if you are into that sort of a thing. And I ended up, well, so I'm gay, and and I lived in kind of a smaller town I lived in a smaller town in Los Angeles, and I always knew that I wanted to move to New York, and I finally took the plunge. And in 2010, I just reached out to anybody and everybody. By this point in my career, I was pretty scrappy and just determined and able to accomplish things like this. And I wound up in the baby product industry, which was just another random career, very, very nice career, a lot of good people. It was booming in this time. Like there's a lot of these baby product companies that were founded out of Manhattan. Mm-hmm. Because even rich people don't have huge apartments and don't want to be looking at a Winnie the Pooh, play gym in the middle of their living room. They want something nice. So I worked for 3 companies and just completely learned so much about entrepreneurship, went on to found my own consulting firm and started helping small, medium baby product brands. And 2 of the clients that I said I would achieve great results for, I did. And I just kind of became their head of sales, their VP of sales for 2 brands. And that's what I've been doing for the past 7 years. And what happened when I started the business was I was absolutely hit with a huge surprise. I started having anxiety. I didn't know it was anxiety at the time, but I started having health problems. My blood pressure was diagnosed as being high. I completely obsessed about it. My partner and I moved back from New York to Los Angeles. I spent my first night in LA, checked into the hospital, thinking I was having a heart attack. They thought I might be as well too. And soon started having panic attacks, couldn't really drive very much at all for the next 2 years. And this all set me down a healing journey. And it was, it changed my life. I mean, really sort of getting to this other side and seeing the adversity that I've overcome, I could honestly say there's not really any part of it that I would trade. I mean, I think that it builds character. You look at who's out there changing the world, and it's not really people that haven't been through some sort of adversity or some extreme adversity. And so I went on this healing journey, and really I recognized that there was a lot of trauma that happened in my life. I had always sort of known that my childhood, and that there were things that happened that weren't really that didn't make me feel good. But to my recollection, at least at this point, nothing horrific had ever happened. And just kind of the narrative was like, I don't deserve to feel that way. Like, small t trauma, or little t trauma, as Dr. Gabor Mate calls it. I think a lot of us grow up and think that we're not really supposed to feel harmed for small things that happened. And there was a lot that happened at school. I was, being gay at a young age, and I had no friends at all for about 3.5, 4 years of my formative years. And at home, thought something was wrong with me, and just kind of carried it through all the way through adulthood. Alcohol, marijuana helped. I made a lot of friends, and a lot of good friends, but just never dealt with it. And then this entrepreneurship journey really forced me to. So anyways, I rambled a bit, but there's the story.
Such an incredible story. Thank you, Matt, for sharing that. I'm curious, hearing you talk, I think a lot of us carry things from our childhood, right? Whether they're trauma or not, I think we carry a lot of that with us, and it's unspoken. I think a lot of times we try to forget about it, right? Or we suppress it, or we tell ourselves wasn't a big deal, right? Or that was normal. It was normal for our experience, right? And to your point, maybe that's why it's harder to identify. I'm curious as to what that moment was like for you when you started your business and started to have these symptoms and these signs. What was that turning point like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. It's all of the above. It's denial. It's, a big thing. Like, you don't know what you don't know. We don't know what we don't know. And the only reason that or the main reason I would say that I am where I'm at today is because I love reading. I am a social person. I have hundreds of thousands of friends, not hundreds of thousands, hundreds and even thousands of friends.
Yeah.
And I've just been exposed to so many different things. And you start to learn that, like, this is not, like, you start to learn from other people's stories and get perspective. But if you never leave your hometown and are only surrounded by the 10 people that you grew up with, you're probably not going to recognize the full degree of what you've grown up with and the chaos that it might have been. I wish I had some sort of like epiphany moment where I could tell you that like everything changed, but it was a very gradual process for me. When you asked that question, one thing stood out. I remember exactly where I was. I was taking my dog for a walk. I had a very meaningful lunch with a family member who sort of started validating, for the first time, really validated some of the feelings I had. And I was walking the dog, and I was like, this question came into my mind, something that I had just like pondered 100 times probably. And it was like, and I hope this is not too graphic, but just like, I'd always kind of thought of like a woman, being raped as like a really, really horrible trauma. And I had heard so many stories of like women that don't speak out about it, that don't think that they deserve to speak out about it. And I've always just thought, like, why wouldn't somebody that's been abused like that speak out and say something? And I was crossing the street, one foot in front of the other, and I was like, they don't realize it was abuse. And that was probably the closest thing I had to an epiphany. I've had a lot of friends come out lately. I mean, not lately, but over the years, and admitted sexual abuse that's happened to them. And we just don't know that these things weren't supposed to happen to us.
Yeah. That is so profound. And, I think there's probably a lot of reasons, but that is a big one, right? You don't realize what's happened to you and have trouble processing it, let alone speaking your truth out loud, right? There's shame that's involved. There's fear of coming forward, but such a powerful moment when you realize maybe what happened to me wasn't okay, right? And having the ability to create awareness around that and explore what that feeling is, I think could be so powerful. And I love what you said about kind of expanding your scope, right? In terms of your knowledge and experiences. I'm a self-development junkie. I love reading. I love learning about other people's stories. And to your point, it does force you to be introspective and reflect on your own experiences too. So, I love, which is one of the reasons I started this podcast. I think there's such power in learning from other people who have been through similar and different experiences from you. So I love that. And as you know, I also had my own experience with heart palpitations, and it's scary, right? When you think you're having a heart attack. I was too afraid to admit to myself that I thought I was having a heart attack. I'm like, nope, can't be. There's no way, right? But yeah, it is incredibly scary. And I think so many of us carry the physical symptoms of stress and anxiety, right? And chronic stress that we carry in our body and we hold, and then it has those physical manifestations. And, I think it's now we're at a point where we're starting to talk about it more, and the mind body connection is super important. I know we're going to get into that, but talk to me a little bit about, so you went from having anxiety, depression, and panic attacks so bad that you couldn't drive a car. And then you were making $1 million in a year. That's a bit of a unique situation, I'm going to say. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, I wish I could. I'm still putting it all together, but I mean, I have a pretty firm grasp on how this all went down. I remember when I was suffering so bad, afraid that I was going to die, and at the same time, like, I started to learn that what was happening to me wasn't all health problems. Like, my blood pressure wasn't that high, and I had luckily found these compassionate doctors. And like, I mean, I called the cardiologist. Hey, like, I just checked my blood pressure at home, and it's, hi, can I come on in? And yeah, come on in, Matt. And she was always nice, and I mean, everyone was always nice to me. And then finally, like, once I realized this was anxiety, I started to have this like this visualization of like being on the, like, of going to a recovery center. And this wasn't like a recovery center for anything necessarily specific. It was a recovery center for life, just for not having, I mean, since I've turned 15, I've had a couple of weeks off. Now I have a little more freedom. I get a little vacation here or there. But I mean, the first, 20 years of my life, I didn't really ever disconnect from life. I don't remember a single moment in my 20s where I ever like just sat there. Like, I don't remember any sort of moment like that. And I had this, I knew I needed to rest. And I had this dream of this like recovery center on the beach, and these like white curtains going in the wind. And I just like, I knew that nobody was coming for me. There was no help. I knew that I wouldn't be homeless, but like, I also, part of my trauma from growing up was like, anything that ever was wrong in my life was always my fault. And that built some character, it built some resiliency. Like, I certainly haven't found myself playing the victim card very often. But I was very independent, and while I was struggling at this point, I needed to slow down. And I'd always been a good saver. So like, I did have money in the bank, where if I wanted to close the business and just like take a year off, I could have done that. But my background has a lot of financial trauma, where there's just this constant saving for tomorrow, just saving for a catastrophe, and not really enjoying life. So I just, I pushed this business towards success. And at the same time, like, it was horrible for me at so many moments because it was so stressful, but it was offering two things. It was a platform for me to grow. And I could see that happening. I mean, I had coaches and therapists and mentors all around me, and it was affording me the opportunity to pay for them and to pay for, I started somatic healing. I went to yoga teacher training. About 3 years ago, I hired a writing coach and started writing a book. I mean, these things are very expensive. I mean, I've spent absolutely $100,000 on healing, if not more. And really what started happening was, like, as I started healing and learning my worth and setting boundaries and learning what I was doing for my clients, that's when I was able to start advocating for myself. And really, like, it just kind of all perpetuated itself. And as I started to become more confident and feeling good and knowing that I deserved the abundant life that I was creating for myself, I asked for it. And, my compensation package was variable. It was based on performance. And I just got the confidence, and oh my God, it was hard, but to negotiate what I was deserving of. And but yeah, it was driven by absolute scarcity. I don't necessarily recommend that sort of a strategy, but at the same time, my story is unique in that it offered me a platform to heal.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's your own unique journey. And so I hear you saying you have some financial trauma from the past that was impacting you in your current day and this scarcity mindset. I also hear you talk about self-worth, with which I think is such a common theme for people, right? Regardless of what's happened to them at some point in their lives, I feel like we have all questioned, are we enough? Or we all carry this concept of I'm not enough. And so I love what you talked about, healing that piece of it and really giving yourself the confidence from within in knowing your worth, regardless of what you do, where you live, right? The kind of car that you drive. And I think that's such a powerful, powerful lesson. And it does take some introspection. It does take a lot of work. Right? But the payoff, to your point, once you have found that and that inner peace, is such a game changer. And I love hearing you talk about that. You also talked about somatic healing and would like to talk a little bit more about that. So tell us a little bit about somatic therapy, what it is, your experience with it. Obviously, it deals with the mind-body connection. I think the way I like to explain it and think about it generally is, traditional talk therapy is a top-down approach of, you're cognitively thinking and processing feelings and emotions, right? Which then may have an effect on your feeling in your body. But somatic therapy, from my perspective and what I know about it, is more of the bottoms up. It's how do we work within the body, right? Which then may transform your thoughts and your feelings. So I'm curious as to what role did that play in your healing journey? What was that like for you?
Somatic experiencing therapy is probably the reason that I am where I'm at right now. I found a practitioner that was just absolutely fantastic, and I'm not sure that every somatic experiencing therapist is created equally. The one that I had was just somebody who was so compassionate towards me, and that really changed the game for me. Because what happened, like for me, when I first started my healing journey, I found Brene Brown. And that was like the first author that I'd ever really read, like every book. And I'm just like, my books have all these marks in them. And I was able to identify that like shame was really at the core um, of what was really holding me back the most. There was this shame. And then also, which is my superpower, I learned that vulnerability is the way through shame. So and it's funny, like even in childhood, I was always a very emotionally intelligent, sensitive guy. I was able to express my feelings, but over the years that sort of clammed up and stopped wanting to talk about feelings. And so somatic experiencing changed this because it gets you into the body to trust what your body is telling you. Like I remember us in one therapy session, me and the therapist, just walking through, okay, let's get into your childhood home, and I'm there with you. Who else do you want with us? The two of us, me and you, and who else do you want? I chose Oprah.
Nice.
So and like you're really able to like rely on the body's intuition, like, and I was able to remember like how I felt during like that specific moment that we were there, and let that guide the you're not in your brain, you're in your body, and you're letting your body like you're learning how to trust your body. And I'm not the best at explaining this, and truthfully I don't even know what was going on for most of this. And it wasn't invasive, it wasn't really truly uncomfortable. It was just learning how to connect your body's signals to your heart and then to your vocal cords and then out your mouth. And you can
Sure.
it really got me to open up about what my body had remembered, like the book The Body Keeps the Score. Like
Yeah.
this book has been on the bestseller list for 180 weeks or something right now. And when we're suffering from trauma, our minds aren't really the first place that we find the answers in, because we don't trust our minds. We've been told that we can't trust our minds. And it's like, I mean, this is therapy 101. I mean, you go to see a therapist, like you start telling them like, hey, like my, husband yelled at me, or my wife, won't like talk to me sometimes. They ask you, how does that make you feel?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's really about getting yourself out of your mind and into your body, and you're able to feel however you want to. You might be you might be more resilient than I am, and something that didn't hurt your feelings really hurt mine, and that's not my fault for being too sensitive. That is,
Mhm.
like, for me, a big part of like the journey with entrepreneurship was that, like, I had to set boundaries for the first time ever. I had to advocate for myself, and I couldn't do it because I had never lived in a situation where there were appropriate boundaries. I had never been respected by people above me in a way like that I could have. I mean, what's the word? Disag- I'm struggling with the word right now. What is it? Like just having a disagreement and getting through it. Like, that was foreign to me. I thought that when disagreements happened, fights happened, and people yelled, and tears had to happen. So, somatic experiencing therapy for me, just your body has the answers, and I was able to tap into my answers.
I love that. So, so powerful. And I think oftentimes we become dissociated from our body over time. And so reconnecting and bringing up memories that are stored in our bodies almost at a cellular level is just so incredibly powerful. You talked about boundaries a little bit and having to set boundaries. Want to explore that a little bit, and sort of how you learned to establish those boundaries for yourself. What was the hardest part of that for you?
Um, if you don't mind, could I comment on that dissociation piece real quick? Because this was a big, I mean, this was huge for me. Like, dissociation is what happens, if somebody's going through a traumatic episode, you're being intensely physically violated. We do dissociate, and it is a form of protection. Like, you are escaping the pain of your body. And I learned that, like, I think that the connotation might be like, oh, dissociation is bad. I mean, it's not ideal to be in a place where you're having to dissociate, but
Yeah.
dissociation saves us from feeling pain.
It's a coping mechanism, right? In the moment, it is saving you, but long term, it's not effective, right? So it has a time
Absolutely.
and a place. Yes, a great point. Great point.
Well, and then, I mean, along with setting boundaries, your question, it's like getting yourself in a situation where you're not having to dissociate ever. And
Yeah.
boundaries. I mean, I had a friend say this to me many years ago. She said something like, life is a constant, like, I wish I could remember the exact verbiage, but it's like, life is a constant. It's all about setting boundaries. I mean, it's just like, there's never a place in your life where you're like, oh, I've set all my boundaries, I'm good. You know,
Yeah.
it's and I don't know how else to do it other than to start. Get support for sure. Read your books, listen to people, talk to your friends. But you start small. When you're at dinner with somebody, and I'm just making this up, but like, you don't drink, and somebody ordered $300 bottle of wine, and you're splitting the check several ways, and you can't afford it. Hey guys, I really can't afford this right now. I think one of the ways to set boundaries is through vulnerability,
Mhm.
really just being honest about what you can handle. Don't start off like setting your boundary with some narcissistic boss that flies off the handle at everything small. That is not the place to start setting boundaries. But you get there, and you get to where I am right now. And I'm not, I mean, like I said, you're not done setting boundaries ever. But I remember there being situations, professional situations where I let things happen to me that I would not let happen to me now. Like, things where somebody's raised their voice and
Mhm.
done something, that's really been unprofessional and uncompassionate. Forget the unprofessional, uncompassionate. And now, like, I've gotten to the place where I would, I'd be able to just, say I'm leaving, and no, and if that cost me my job, that's okay at this point. Obviously that's a privileged place to be able to say that. But boundaries are like, it's not an isolated area. It's part of the whole equation. As you set these boundaries, you start honoring your truth. You do get to a place where you are comfortable with the consequences of those boundaries, because you don't want people in your life that are not respecting your boundaries. That's not to mean there's not compromise sometimes, but like, boundaries, you just keep practicing and talking about them in therapy, talking about them with friends. A lot of people are struggling with boundary. Everybody I know is struggling with boundaries.
So interesting. And I agree with you. I hear it so often, especially in the clients that I work with. I think part of it is nobody explicitly taught us how to set boundaries growing up, I think, for the most part, right? Some of us may have been fortunate enough to have that role modeled in our families. But even then, as a child, you're not thinking, oh, that's how you set a boundary, right? Like so part of it is learning to set boundaries, but I think you really touched upon a critical concept, which is accepting the consequences. I think we're so afraid of what happens when we set a boundary that it deters us from setting the boundary to protect ourselves. And so once you get to a place where you can say, I'm okay with whatever's on the other side of this, right? I'm okay if I set a boundary and somebody is not respecting it and I need to walk away from that relationship, that's okay. And it's really, really, really hard, right? And a lot of the ingrained fears and conditioning comes up for us in terms of the fear of judgment, right? The fear of losing a friendship, the fear of vulnerability, and being able to share what you need and what you actually want. And so, I always, like you said, start small. I always encourage people to figure out where they're feeling that tension in their lives, where they're feeling the discomfort when they feel like they have to do something or should do something versus they want to be somewhere or with someone, exploring what that feeling is and really looking at what's bringing that up and where do they need to set or want to set some boundaries in their lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah, such an important topic. You are writing a book. I know you mentioned that earlier. Talk to us a little bit about your memoir and what we can expect.
Thank you. So, this book has been probably my biggest modality for healing. I don't think I could have written the book if I didn't start the therapy and get these thoughts out of me. But I like writing. I think that, and I'm not trying, like, when I work with my clients, I try to not mandate any sort of modality. If writing's not your thing, I think journaling is like one of the most accessible and amazing things ever. You can just write a couple sentences, but if that's not your thing, I don't preach that. But I have found that writing is a place, and it's a place and a way for me to get thoughts out of my head and make sense of them. So I started this book project. It's been 38 months, I guess, as of now.
Wow.
And I hired a writing coach, and I had no experience writing at all. I didn't even like to read when I was a kid, which is just crazy because I read probably a book a week now. If I could read more, I absolutely would. But yeah, so I started writing this book, really outlining my healing journey. In 2019, something sort of really hard happened on my healing journey. My grandmother passed away, which she was old, and this wasn't like the most traumatic thing ever. But as I was trying to express my needs to my family, we had a falling out that really kept us from speaking for about 3 years. And this was during COVID, and it was painful for everybody involved. But at the same time, it was absolutely needed for me to really get to know myself and to acknowledge that there were things that I needed that weren't provided, and explore the root of them. And my book is really sort of takes place during that time period from 2019 to 2022, as I progressed from these wake-up calls that I was happening, and then reflecting on childhood, and then kind of making sense of it, and how I came out on top. I mean, COVID was a really interesting thing for me. Talk about boundaries. I was probably the most careful person of anybody I've met during COVID. I still am not quite clear what that was about. I would say something like my life started getting good for the first time ever, and I didn't want to die, like, where I think, like, if I would have been enjoying my life all along the way, I might have been a little bit more risk tolerant. But the book really chronicles this journey to where, my partner and I ended up buying our dream home over here in LA, and really I gave myself the life that I wanted. And through this time, it kind of, not to give too much of a spoiler alert, but I had this general practitioner who took an insanely abnormal amount of interest in my mental well-being, and so I saw him frequently, and we always did these assessments. And then he, hey Matt, what's going on? You're not doing, like. And one day I came in, and he's like, Matt, what's going on? Like, you tested perfectly. And I just kind of responded intuitively, and I said, I don't hate myself anymore. And then he looked at me and he said, wow, Matt, he was like, if you could bottle that up, like, that's worth billions of dollars.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of the journey that I'm taking the reader on through this book. And it's just like, I just never knew that I was supposed to feel any of these feelings. I never knew. I thought I was broken, thought I was damaged. And I came out the other side, and I want to show other people it's possible for them too. And
Absolutely.
I didn't like, there weren't like therapy sessions where I was just like screaming, crying or anything. It was just like, oh, like, it felt good.
Yeah. It's liberating, right? Yeah. I think because we were taught to suppress or hide our true feelings, right? And we were also taught there's good feelings and bad feelings, right? So if a bad feeling came up, what do you do with that? And so I think
Keep it to yourself.
Keep it to yourself, right? Like, don't inconvenience anyone else. Nobody wants to hear about it. So I think that's so powerful, and obviously therapy can be a wonderful healing modality to go process, to go through those emotions that you have not gone through. And I love, it sounds like such an incredible book, such an inspiring story, and I can't wait to read it. And I'm sure that a lot of this work that you do with your clients I'm assuming it ties into the mindset work that you do in the work with your clients. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, right now, like, I just, I'm careful to say this, and I know that life is not linear and there's going to be obstacles that come my way, but like, I felt so horrible that I don't feel anxiety or depression at all. And I haven't felt this for, a year maybe. I think it's possible that there might be some underneath, but I just am so used to feeling horrible that this is like, it's just so tolerable. But right now, my partner and I are starting our surrogacy journey. Business has changed a little bit in my consulting business. The economy has affected, things. And I just have probably never had more real stress on my plate, but I'm sleeping better than ever. I trust that it will all work out the way it's supposed to. And it's a tall order. It's taken a while to get here, but you learn that, like, you don't have to control everything. And I think that's the effect of trauma. Like, you think that you're not good enough. And I could not describe this, like, why this perfectionism, why I was so hard on myself. But it's like, you start to let that go eventually, and you just do your best, and you have these boundaries so people aren't around that are making you feel bad anymore. And you just believe that when you believe that whatever you dream is possible, you look around and you see, like, there's tens of millions of people who have accomplished the things that you want to do, and they're not smarter than you. They might know how to ask for help better. They might, but it's all mindset. It's all mindset, and learning that you can do anything that you dream of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. So, Matt, tell us a little bit about, we talk about success on this podcast and redefining success. Talk to me about how you define success. What does success look like to you? What does it feel like to you? And how has that changed? How has that definition changed and evolved for you over time?
I have a lot of it's not a hard question to answer, but it's just, it's a big question. I think that, like many people, success was mainly financial. When we were younger, it was things. And success for me, it still does involve financial safety. I wouldn't use the word financial, like, it's not to buy more things. It's to buy more things that make you feel safe. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to have a vacation home in the mountains right now, nothing fancy, but like, that's kind of on my short list, something that I
Mm-hmm.
could go to and recharge to. I don't think that's extravagant. The word that comes up for me, though, is peace.
Mm-hmm.
And I am, when this thing happened with my family a few years ago, I remember just like, I probably a therapist asked me, and I was kind of perplexed by the answer that they're like, well, there's like, someone said, "What do you want?" And I just said peace, and that
Yeah.
meant like internal peace.
Yeah.
And this year I read this book. This probably changed me. This really changed me in December. There was a book called The Velvet Rage. It's a gay author. This book, it's probably 20 years old or so, maybe 30 years old even. I forget exactly. But he gives like these these recommendations, like 27 things to embrace to live a, fulfilling life. That's not verbatim at all, something like that. And I was just shocked. Like, he said, prioritize inner peace above all else. And that just changed everything for me. Since then, I've changed the way that I drink, the way that I use marijuana. I really haven't. I had some the other day, and it was not what I remember it being. But it doesn't make. It makes me feel peace. I'm eating better. Sugar is not making me feel peaceful. Sorry, I'm giving a long answer, but it's like, it's peace. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
when you can go to bed feeling this inner peace.
Yeah. The calm and the peace, I think. And I think that also relates back to your earlier point talking about Brene, right? It also ties back to the vulnerability and the authenticity of being true to who you are at your core. I think there's such power in that. So, and that's different for everybody, right? What brings you inner peace is going to might be different than somebody else. So, it's great advice. Matt, it's such an inspiring story. Thanks so much for being here, for sharing your insights and expertise. Where can our listeners learn more about you and the work that you do?
Thank you. And thank you for having me. I love speaking with you, and I love the work you're doing in the world. And
Thank
I think
you.
that, the trauma piece, like, I know this is a tall statement, but I think all of us have something. Somebody said something to us when we were a child that we never processed,
Yeah.
right? There's a limiting belief.
Yeah.
How many of us were told, things about money, like, be grateful for what you have? The world is a completely different place now, where the cost of living is just astronomical. And I believe that being grateful, I'm very grateful for a lot. I'm not grateful for a small paycheck that can't provide me what I need
Mm-hmm.
to survive off of.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
My website, I'd love for you to follow me. I have a weekly blog. I'm all about vulnerability and talking about what I'm learning in my journey. So mattgerlach.com. I'm very active on Instagram at I am Matt Gerlach. And I'm really putting a lot out there for entrepreneurs right now. I have a mastermind that I'm starting right now to help entrepreneurs learn their value and create themselves a very abundant life by setting boundaries and just everything that I've learned. I want to help other entrepreneurs right now, but everybody will benefit from facing this trauma and limiting beliefs. And I'd love to have you along. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Matt. And of course, you can visit my website at gialacqua.com, reach out on Instagram at gialacqua. On the homepage of my website, you can download your complimentary copy of From Chaos to Clarity, a 30-day journal for self-discovery and healing. This is Gia signing off with gratitude for your time and energy. Our mic drops, but the movement continues. Until next time, your next chapter is waiting. Take care.
That concludes another empowering episode of Your Future Starts Now. Before we wrap up, I want to thank this incredible community of high-achieving women. Your energy, resilience, and commitment to growth are the driving force behind what we do. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate it, leave a review, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Your feedback fuels our mission to empower high-achieving women just like you. And of course, share Your Future Starts Now with the extraordinary women in your life who are also on a journey of healing and empowerment. Connect with us on social media, share your thoughts, let us know what topics you'd like to explore in future episodes. Stay connected on Instagram at Gia Lacqua. I encourage you to carry the energy of this conversation into your day and keep on supporting the incredible women around you. Until next time, remember, your next chapter is waiting.